Hello, and welcome to the journey of grief, becoming us without them. My name is Barbara Field. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I specialize in treating trauma and addiction and attachment. And I started this channel to support people that have lost a loved one, even though we know every single person's experience of grief is completely different than anybody else's experience of grief. There are certain things that we all share. And especially in the beginning, when you have no idea what's going on, it can be helpful to listen to someone else talk about something that you've been worrying about or struggling with and realize that you are not a problem. So I would like to invite each one of you to introduce yourself and tell us about the person that you lost. And let's start with Eric.
Thanks, Barb. My mother died in January of this year. She was 86 years old, and she and I were particularly pretty close. I was an only child, and she probably 12 years ago had a series of illnesses. She was working and came down with a case of meningitis, and then subsequently had a stroke and a seizure as she was trying to recover, and never went back to work after that. Really kind of changed her whole life. And a few years after that, she came down with tongue cancer. They removed part of her tongue, and that caused a whole lot of grief. But from that point on until this January, I mean, I really got an opportunity to have 12 more years with her. And I think that was a real gift when I thought of losing her, and the ability to have some extra time. I've got 3 kids, and she loved my kids more than anything else in the world. And I was particularly glad that she got some time to see them all graduate from college in that additional time. And she used to watch them once a week for date night, care for them while my wife and I went out. She'd been a caretaker for my dad, who had dementia. I had no idea how bad his dementia was until she came down with meningitis, and I had to care more for her. The beginning of the end with her started just at the end of last year. She was slowing down and falling. We weren't really sure why, but ultimately in January, she was admitted to the hospital 3 times. At the first discharge, someone had mentioned putting her on hospice, and the hospice director said she really won't qualify. You have to have death within 6 months. And they said it's really not the appropriate time yet. And by the time she left the hospital the 3rd time, we all agreed to put her on hospice, and she died 2 days later. So I don't think we were really ready for the sudden decline at the end, but she was ready. She had told me that she was ready to go home, and she'd lived a full life. Quality of her life wasn't what it was previously. She really became dependent primarily on me for so many of her needs. But when we saw it was getting close to the end, I called my family, and the night before she passed, all 3 of my kids came to be with her and me and my wife, her sister who lives in town, and my cousin. We all sat around her and and prayed with her. And then each person had their alone time to be with her and say their goodbyes. Um, she was living in a board and care home the last 2 months, and I spent the night there with her on a mat on the floor next to her bed. I woke up twice during the night to give her meds, and she'd just been put on morphine. I woke up at 6:45 that morning and stood up, held her hand, and talked to her, rubbed her face. She was breathing very rhythmically. She was on oxygen at that point, had never been on oxygen before. But I could see every breath. It wasn't labored or anything. It was quite restful. And then at 7 o'clock, she just stopped breathing. The breath before her last, I had no idea was going to be her last, but just suddenly it just stopped. So I feel very grateful that she's in a better place right now. I was able to say my piece and give her a tribute, a blessing of all the things that she had done for me. And that's a great comfort to me. But it's still fresh. It's been just 5 months, and I'm still going through the wake up in the morning and think, oh, that's right, she's not here anymore. So that's my story.
Thanks, Eric. So, Jacqueline, would you like to go next?
Sure. My name's Jacqueline, and I lost my grandpa, who was more of like a father figure to me. My grandparents raised me most of my life. I lost him in October of 2015. So this year it'll be 10 years, which seems unreal. I was 19 when I lost him, and he loved to travel. He was in Hawaii. He started having some stomach pains, and it got to the point where he had gone to the hospital, and then they flew him back home because they found cancer. And when he came home, they did the scans and they found cancer in his lungs and his liver and his kidney, and they didn't find any piece of his organs that didn't have cancer at this point. And when I had learned the news from my grandma, I think at that moment, it was hard I was 19, so it was really hard for me to grasp that anybody else was losing him. I just felt like I was losing him. And I was really confused as to why nobody wanted, or how I felt was that nobody wanted to save him, even though he wasn't savable at this point. He was in the hospital when they told everyone that he had stage 4 cancer, to the point where he only had a few days. And he gave everyone a pep talk about how everyone's life was going to be great, and he lived a long and an amazing life, and he was joking around. He invited his neighbor over and gave him like a whole speech on how he was his best friend, and the amount of people that came through the hospital in just the 24 hours that he was there, because after that he ended up going on hospice and he passed 2 days later. So the goodbye was really, we found out he was sick on a Friday, and by Sunday he was gone. And I lived with him. So I would be in my room, and then I would go out to the living room where the hospital bed was and just sit with him. And At this point, his sisters were visiting, my dad, my uncle, my aunt, and everybody was able to say their goodbyes. But that last day where his breath was like, he was breathing like every minute. And it just seemed so unreal to see, like, is he going to take another breath? Like, it's already been 60 seconds. And to watch like someone who I've always viewed so strong just be kind of laying there helpless was so hard. And I was there when he took his last breath, and I just remembered thinking like, well, you know, it took a while for it to get to this point, so I feel like it's going to happen again. So even when they were taking him, I'm like, I think you need to keep him here a little bit longer. I don't think he's actually gone. And then everything after that just felt like a complete dream, like I was trying to wake up from. And he he was the type of person that you could meet on the street and he'd give you his number and you could guarantee to like he'd answer the phone and he'd be there for you. And his celebration of life, there was like 300 people there, and it was just like if you met him once, he was a friend for life. And I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to learn so much from him, and to have so much of him inside me. But with like each milestone that comes since then, gratefully he got to see me graduate high school, but every milestone since then, it just feels like there's a hole missing. Like he should still be here. So that's a little bit of, that's my story.
Thank you, Jacqueline. That was awesome.
Hi, my name is Karamia, and I'm very blessed to be here and to be invited to be in the group and share stories. My story started about 10 years ago. I moved from North Carolina to California to be with my mother and my father at the end of their life. It just so happened in my life I was able to do that. And my mother died in 2019, and my father died in 2023. It was a journey, and I'm very grateful to have been on that journey. It was a good journey, all in all. Had its ups and downs. My dad had a very hard time the last 2.5, 3 years that he lived, because both my parents had been married for 70 years. So when mommy died, dad was still alive, and it was COVID. So I pretty much, with my grief, I did okay. I'm also a hospice nurse. I've worked in a hospice and worked in death and dying. Read a lot of books about it. So I thought I was doing pretty good with the whole grief thing until my dad died. And I knew my dad was in his 90s. Overall, his health was good, but he was starting to get dementia. He was starting to go downhill. His kidneys were closing down. And I knew he was towards the end of his life. I did go to hospice and ask to put him on hospice a month before he died. And they told me he did not qualify. It was a 6.5 instead of a 7. So that was really disheartening for me. Now I know what patients feel like. So I just kept taking care of him at home. And finally, he had gotten to the point where I called hospice back, and they were going to come, and he died the next day. So hospice was never involved with my father. They were involved with my mother, but not with my father. And that was hard. It was hard. I had to do all of the work myself after a patient dies. I had to do the 911 call and call the funeral, not funeral home, but where we were having him cremated, and deal with all that. I thank God that I was a hospice nurse and knew how to proceed in that area. It was hard to watch my father die. I was surprised. He was talking to me and I looked down and wasn't breathing. And it was like, Dad, are you there? How could he not be there? He was just there. It was just very, just wasn't ready for it. And I thought I would be. I thought I would know, but I didn't know. And my grief was very, very deep. And I didn't think it would be. I thought I would be relieved for his sake, knowing that, because all he talked about was he wanted to be back with his wife. He wanted to be with Pat. Please, Karen, when it's time, let me go, because I don't want to be here. I want to be with Pat. And I've done, he's a Christian. He made his way with the Lord. He had, with his friends, he had said his goodbyes. Most of his friends had already passed. So, he was ready to go. And I was ready for him because he was sad and he couldn't do what he used to be able to do. But gosh, grief was overwhelming for me. I think I grieved everybody's death that had gone before him, that I had been able to, I guess, stronghold, put on your big girl panties. Yeah, it was really excruciating. I did a lot of seeking out what grief is, how could I heal, what do I do? I spent a lot of alone time. Those first couple of weeks were very painful, very painful.
Thank you so much. And so each of you has asked that we talk about one specific thing together. And Eric wants us to talk about how people tell you how you should be grieving, rather than supporting you in grieving your own way and in your own time. And so, Eric, how about if you lead us off with that discussion, and we can all chime in.
Yeah, thanks, Barb. We all went through a different process with each of our losses, and I'm struck by many of the similarities. I can relate to both of the ladies and the stories that they went through, but I don't want to discount that at all by saying everybody goes through something different. And I think the thing that has been most difficult for me, I'm probably not the most objective person to say this, but I think I've done pretty well with the loss of my mom. And being able to, I don't know, I guess what you say, maybe settle some unfinished business with her. And, some of the things from growing up and my early childhood, and the fact that she was just a very caring person. I exactly told her story about her grandfather. I mean, my mother was always there to help other people out as well. And so I wanted to thank her for all of the sacrifices that she had made for me when I was younger. And so in that basis, I think I've done pretty well. I get choked up at times, but I really haven't lost it. Went back to work fairly quickly thereafter. Back to work in a couple of days, and I think there have been some people who have said, well, you seem to be doing fairly well, so probably hasn't hit you yet. So just be ready because it's going to hit you. And 5 months later, and I still haven't had that issue where I just kind of break down and just lose it over the fact that my mom's not here anymore. So everybody grieves in their own way, and when I get stressed out or I get short, people tend to think that, it's because you lost your mother. Well, no, maybe it's because somebody pissed me off or I had a bad day. And don't assume that just because I'm down or frustrated about something, it's because I miss my mom. Somebody pretty close to me had even suggested that had a lot going on when my mom died, and we deliberately did not have a memorial service right away. We wanted to allow time for everybody to kind of get through that first stage of grief and plan it appropriately. I wanted a memorial service that my mom would really be proud. That really showcased a lot of the wonderful things that she accomplished in her life and how she cared for people. And one of the things that I was waiting on the memorial was I had seen my mom had a steno book, and she had started to write an obituary a couple of years ago. And I stumbled across it one day, and that's not really my business. I don't want to talk to her about it. So we never did mention it, but I frantically was going through all of her things. We still have her house. Much of the stuff was intact. I was going through desks, dressers, bookcases, all kinds of things, looking, where did she put that? And I couldn't find it. And I was hoping that maybe by the time we did the memorial, that I would actually have the opportunity to allow her to speak her own words about her life. And it's one disappointment that I wish I didn't have to go through. But this person told me that most of your mother's friends are already gone, and she outlived many of them, and you got a lot of stuff going on. Just don't take on the burden of having a memorial service for her, And I thought, wow, I can't do that to my mom, and kind of just ignore that. And I thought, at least for my own kids, there's a grieving process that we go through, and I know that's helped me with other people, not necessarily family members, but friends who have died. And it just started, I guess, instilling in me a doubt of if I really haven't broken down yet, and am I really supposed to be having this memorial service? That am I really doing the right thing? And I'm not allowed to just kind of grieve in my own way. And so that's the thing I try to be sensitive to, is to just honor each person's journey, where they are, and be supportive for them, but don't give them a burden of what they should or shouldn't be doing, or how they should or shouldn't be feeling, because it's a raw time. And I think what of all of us have said is, we need support and help, and we get comfort from others, and that's hopefully the role that others can play, and not so much necessarily diagnosing us or giving us the proper remedy for how to get over your grief. So I love my mom, and I hope I will always grieve her in some way. I think that honors the importance she had in my life. So I hope that helps, Barb.
That's great. That was awesome. So, Karamia, how about you? So what has been your experience of people trying to tell you how you should be grieving and what kind of timeline you should be on?
Well, when you asked that, my one experience that I had, I had lots of them. But my dad had passed and I'm in Al-Anon, so I went to a meeting the next day. It was the next day. And a friend came up to me and said, "How are you doing?" I said, "My dad just died." And she said, "Oh, well, you look pretty good for your dad just dying." And I just lost it and I had to leave. I just couldn't even speak. It was like, how do you know what's going on inside me? So there were experiences like that for me that happened almost the opposite of with Eric, but yet it's the same. It's the same. Somebody thinking they know what's going on within you, and that was very hard. That was very, very hard to deal with. I can definitely have empathy with what Eric is saying and why he's sharing what he's sharing.
Yeah, thanks. How about you, Jacqueline? How about the people who tried to tell you how to grieve and how fast?
Um, I think that because I was so young when I lost my grandpa, that a lot of people expected me to react the way I did. Unfortunately, once he passed, financially, the family got really torn apart. And I I didn't know. Basically, I just thought that anything bad that happened in the world was because people weren't understanding that I just lost my grandpa. So I internalized everything. And I think a lot of my family members thought I was like angry with them. And I was living with my grandma and I was just so angry with her and I had no idea why. And it's because every time I looked at her, I saw my grandpa. And so I couldn't talk to my family. Honestly, we had a falling out and I didn't talk to most of my family for 4 5 years. I think that like around 2020 is kind of when my like distant relatives started like reaching out just to remind me that they loved me, and I kind of forgot that. Um and I think that as time went on, like everyone's life continued, but I felt like I was still stuck in the time that I lost him. Um and so when I started going around some of my family members, um I I would hear their voices and I would think of him and I would just start crying. And I think that they were somewhat understanding, but I think that they also felt like I you remind me of him too. So I want to be around you. And that was hard for me to kind of comprehend. Um and I mean, it's this year it'll be 10 years and it's still like I have children now and I wish that he would have been able to see them. And so I feel like every milestone it almost like opens up the grief again. Which is really really hard. And it's made me nervous because my grandma just got on hospice this week. So there's some things kind of stirring around in my mind. Feels a little triggering, but I don't feel like I'm grieving in the same way as when I lost him. Like when I lost him, it just like hit hit me like a ton of bricks. So it's my experience.
Thank you. Okay, Kiramia wanted us to talk a little more about how surprised we can be at the degree to which we grieve. Like for me, I was a therapist, so somehow I had it in my mind that I shouldn't be so sad for so long. I should be over this. And I wasn't really very kind to myself about how long it was taking. And so I had people who had to give me permission to grieve and permission for it to take a long time. And instead of them telling me I should be over it, telling me I shouldn't be over it. And that I shouldn't hold myself to that double standard of I'm a therapist, so I should be over this. So it was very interesting having people invite me to grief instead of wish I would go away with mine. Although I'm sure there were several people who did that too. So, Jacqueline, you want to, or Karen, would you like to start us off on that one, that being surprised by the grief?
Sure. Hi, I'm Karen again. I'm not sure where I want to start with it. I just was overwhelmed. I was so overwhelmed with grief to deal with any of the legal papers and everything that had to be done. It was like walking through mud. The only time in my life that it had been like that before was when I had went through a divorce. Been married 27 years and divorced. And it was like walking through mud. And that's how it was. When I lost my parents, I felt like I was an orphan. I felt like I was just dangling, like somebody took a little string, like I was just. And I have 3 sons, and I'm very close to them, and I have grandchildren, and I'm very close to them, although they're in North Carolina, so I have to fly to see them, but I talk to them all the time. Grief was just not what I thought it was going to be. And it got better, and I'm doing much better with it now. I had to allow myself to cry. When I was walking through the grocery store, if I had to cry, I had to cry. And I cried. And I realized, people don't even realize sometimes when you're walking through the store and you're crying. Nobody said anything. So I thought, why am I so worried? I lost that lack of word, that worry of what I look like or how I'm going to present myself. I just that didn't bother me anymore. I knew that I was very sad, and and sad doesn't describe it. And even now, there's times something might be said, or I might smell something, or might be the middle of the night, and just something will trigger me, and I can go right back into that grief and know they're not there. My loved one's not there. And it's I guess as long as my dad was alive, the family was still, in my brain, my family was still intact. Once Daddy died, the matriarch, the person that is the head of the household, is gone. And it was devastating. It was hard, but I learned that I could find help. I went to a grief study group, and that really helped me. And then I started reaching out and finding the areas around that dealt with grief, that could help me deal with my grief. And I do have depression. I went back into depression. That was a really hard, that was another facet of my grief, I would say.
Well, thank you. So, Eric, are there any parts of the grief that have caught you by surprise?
Yeah, I can relate to Karen and her story about the things that she said about smells or And I had 60 years with my mom. There's a lot of things to remember. And the things that she liked doing, we wanted to do with her. And so she loved Lake Tahoe. We go to Lake Tahoe, and it's, my first thought is, wow, what would mom be doing right now? And so I think that's the thing that surprises me, I guess, is being surprised about when it hits you, because you don't always prepare. When Jacqueline was talking about milestones, you can always kind of prepare. Mother's Day just came by, and I thought, wow, it'll be my first Mother's Day without my mom. And so we focused on my wife and kids. I think we're doing pretty well. And so it's not that it's always a reminder, but it's those surprising times that you just don't plan for, that really gets you off guard. And you mentioned about the grocery store. I mean, yeah, sometimes they don't always happen in the most appropriate place. You can be at work and somebody says something, and it's like, that's what my mom used to always say. And it gets you, and then people are like, oh, what did I do? And I'm all, oh, it's okay. No, it just took me back to a spot that, so, and then people feel awful. Some people in the grocery store maybe don't even know. I think we tune out. I tune out, certainly, when I go to the grocery store. I just want to get my stuff and go. I'm not paying attention to who's there. But those people, when they do trigger you with something, or don't trigger you, but bring up something that's a reminder, makes them feel bad. And it's for me always wanting to say, when I think about my mom, it's a happy time. And so don't apologize for that. That brings joy to my heart. So.
Thanks. So Jacqueline, so what surprised you about the grief?
What surprised me is how much it has come in waves over the last 10 years. I got to a point where I thought I was completely done grieving. And I was like, when I think of him, I only think of the happy things. And I was able to complete all these milestones in my life. I graduated college, and I thought about him when I did it, and I just thought about how proud he would be of me. And with everything along the way, I can relate, Eric, to what you were saying. Even when it comes to like preparing for those milestones and knowing that like, oh, it might be a little bit hard, but just thinking about how proud he would be and how he would want to be here, right? I think lately, I wonder if it's because it's hitting like the 10-year mark. That might be part of it, but a lot of things this year have been hitting a little bit harder. And I don't know if that's just because, I work full time and I'm in school and I'm a mom, so I am busy, so I don't have a lot of time to think about it. So when I do think about it, it feels very intense. But lately there's just been so many things that remind me of him, and it makes me so happy, but in such like a overwhelmed way, because it just makes me miss him, and just makes me really wish that he was here. And I'm happy that I am thinking about him, and I get the opportunity to kind of have these moments where I can think of memories or think of how he would feel. But I didn't think that after 10 years I would just still, like, when things happen, I'm like, oh, I want to call him. I really want to call him right now and tell him how great my day was, or my daughter's just said a new word. Like, I want to tell him. So I think the fact that it comes in waves is probably the most surprising, even though there's the saying, grief comes in waves and it's not linear, but you don't believe it until you feel it, I guess.
Right. So, right after my husband died, one of my very sweet friends drove from very far away and spent an afternoon with me. And she had lost her husband, I think it was around 3 or 6 years before. I can't remember. It's been a long time now. And she kind of said, now, don't be surprised by these things. And she sort of laid out the map for me. And she said, one of the things that will surprise you the most is that all your couple friends will go away. And I'm like, that's weird. Why would that happen? And she said, nobody quite knows, but everybody talks about it. Is it that now you're a loose woman and you're going to steal someone's husband? Or is it because watching what you're going through reminds them that before very long, one of them is going to be going through that? Or who knows? But indeed, you become that third wheel and your couple sort of go away. And even though they say this typically happens, it's really hard not to say to yourself, well, because no one liked me. They only liked him. All those other neurotic things that you can say to yourself. And then I was really surprised by how, when my granddaughters do cool things, how sad I am that he doesn't get to be a grandpa. He would have been a great grandpa. So Jacqueline would like us to talk about how losing them can impact your relationship with the rest of your family, and then the consequences for that. And like in my husband's family, the last 10 years he was alive, I had been in school and working and busy and hadn't really spent that much time with his family. And after he died, they just all kind of disappeared like they were never there. And that was really weird after 50 years of knowing people to be a ghost. So, Jacqueline, yeah. Jacqueline, since that's your question, I'll let you start with that one.
Yeah. So like what you had mentioned, Eric, like everyone grieves in their own way, and feeling told that you're grieving a certain way, I think pushed me away from my family, because I felt as if I was the only person that lost him. And because everyone reminded me of him, and I didn't think I could think of him and still do life. I felt like if I thought of him and I was so consumed by the memories and my grief and how much I missed him, that I wasn't going to be able to live. And so I moved out of my grandma's house, and I really lost contact. There were some things along the way that kind of impacted my relationships, but some of the family members that I was closest to, that I didn't have, like, there was nothing that happened between us. It was just that they reminded me of him. And I remember like my Uncle Harry's voice. I could not hear his voice because he sounds exactly like my papa. And as much as I love him so much, I just like, his face looks like him too. And when I came back to the family, and he joked like my papa, and it made me like want to go away again, because I was like, this is too much. I don't know if I'm ready for this, but I think yes, everyone in the family grieved him in different ways because of the different relationships that everyone had with him. And now that I see my grandma starting to, decline, I'm just like, I don't have those relationships anymore. So I'm curious as to like what that's gonna look like. But yeah, it's a little bit of my story.
Thanks, Jacqueline. So, how about you, Eric? It hasn't been very long, but has there been ways that it impacts your relationship with the rest of the family or other people that are around?
I'll just say one thing first, and I'll come to that. I feel like the newbie, because I have the most recent loss, but I also lost an unborn daughter 6 months into a pregnancy. We had twins and we lost our daughter. And that was 26 years ago. And that hurts like it was yesterday. I think you, Jacqueline, said about remembering the times and all the good times together. And with my daughter Grace, I don't have that. I held her in my arms, but she was already gone by the time I did that. And so it just, time doesn't heal all wounds. But boy, how do other family members react? When I lost my grandfather, and I think I was about 26 years old when I lost my grandfather. We knew he was going. He had something very similar to ALS. He was bedridden, had lost control of most of his muscles, and his kidneys were starting to fail. A lot of these things just I'm hearing he turned ashen gray, and we got a call from the person that cared for him at home and said, it's close. And I went there and I saw him, and he said, it's on you. I need you to hold the family together. I'm 26 years old, shit. How it was really a burden. And not that I don't love my family, but when somebody tells you that, and then you go through a lot of turmoil after somebody leaves, and you're going through all of their affairs and everything, and that was a tough thing to go through. But my family has been wonderful, and like I said, I reached out to them. They came. I'm sorry about what happened with your husband's family, Barb. I can't imagine. One of the nice things was at my mom's memorial, just the outpouring of my dad's family still. They had been married 50 years. He'd been gone for 13 years, and they all came in. And I guess I didn't appreciate that they knew my mom longer than I did. And here I was thinking about how I had this incredible relationship with her. I didn't have any other siblings. It was, really there was no competition or anything, but there were people who knew parts of her life that I had only seen through scrapbooks and stories that were told, that had a much longer tenure with her. And so it's, I guess the other thing I will mention is my church family. We became estranged from our church. That we came back to Sacramento. My parents had gone to a church in town, and so we joined the church when we had left the Bay Area. Our kids were baptized there and confirmed there, and was active in the church on the council. And I think we'd been gone for several years, and just the outpouring. We had a memorial there, that everybody reaching out and contacting us and wanting to do whatever they could, and just that unconditional acceptance of sharing God's love. I think that was a surprise for me, but it was also comforting. I didn't have an issue with divisiveness in our family, in any significant kind of way, and that too, I think, was a tremendous comfort. And I saw how people can really help others in their grief. So.
Oh, thank you. Okay, Karamia, how have the death impacted your relationships with the rest of the family?
Well, the first year, it was hard for me to, I'm not sure the exact words I want to use, but put up with any garbage. So, but that was a hard year for communication with my kids, with my grandkids more than anything. I'm very close to them, and so that was hard. That has definitely been healed and is doing much better. My boys were very supportive. I was very lucky. God blessed me in that respect. And to do with family relations, my dad was the oldest in his family, and he was the last one to go. So none of his brothers and sisters were left. The cousins were, but we live in California. They lived in Ohio, so I didn't hear a lot. You know, we talked, and they definitely sent their well wishes, and so I didn't have to deal with that. Thank God. I can empathize with you, Barbara, and with other people, and Jacqueline, that dealing with family members that don't understand the grief. I think they fear it, so they walk away from it. And I can understand that, but that doesn't make it pleasant. Doesn't make it pleasant in our life.
Yeah.
So for the most part, I've been very blessed with that.
Cool. Okay, so just really quickly here at the end, after listening to all of this, if people were to forget everything any of us said in this entire video and just walk away with one thing that you feel like is the wisdom from your grieving process that you would want to hand down to the generation, what would it be? So, how about you, Eric?
I think it's to be sensitive about giving advice to people, however well-intentioned it is. I know it always kind of sounds like a cliche too, but just to offer their support to people. I think some people say that and they don't really mean it. So people are afraid to say, hey, you know, you mentioned, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm busy or whatever. But really not to try and be helpful by telling people how they can deal with their grief. Or that if they don't seem to be having a problem, that implying that, well, you just haven't hit it yet. So get ready.
Yeah, that's great advice. It's really hard to know what to say to people, isn't it? How to support them.
Yeah.
People get anxious, I think, and blurt, but not as helpful as some of the more thought out things. How about you, Jacqueline? What is your takeaway? What do you want people to know?
I think something that I heard throughout this group was just remembering that everyone had a different relationship with the person. So just being aware of, that's not the word I'm looking for, but like being aware of that. Because when I lost my grandpa, I'm thinking, I don't know if I never had a life before him. Kind of like what Eric said about like his mom and forgetting that everyone else knew her before he was born. So just acknowledging the differences in relationships and the memories that kind of come along with that too.
Thanks. So, Karamia?
I guess the one thing that I would say that I would want to put out is God is with us. Through it all, God is with us. There's purpose in it all.
Oh, thank you. I think the one thing I would want people to know is go and help, go and spend time. Don't wait to be asked, don't wait to be invited. I remember just at the beginning, and even at the memorial service, which was a month later, people would say, just let me know if you need anything. And I would think, I can't even remember if I brushed my teeth today. I'm not going to be able to make a to-do list for you. So my advice would be to say, come with a list. Like, hey, I'd like to help you. Which one of these would you like? Can I mow your lawn? Like, I didn't even think about the lawn. And the day before the family was coming into the memorial, my husband's wonderful best friend rode by and said, oh, look at that yard. And went home and got all his yard gear. And when I got home from work, he had completely landscaped the front yard. What a gift that was. So come with a list. Can I just come and sit in your living room and read? Not talk to you, not bother you, just be with you and read. Can I come and drag you out for a meal? Because I'm guessing you're probably not doing a really good job with that. Can I help you with, because if you say, just let me know if you need anything, I don't even know how to answer that question.
That's
So
a great
maybe later-
idea. It takes the insincerity or just I just want to say something nice that really is an empty promise out of it. It just shows I care and I'm gonna do something about it. And yeah.
Yeah. And his friend was so great. He called once a week at first. What do you need? And I'd be like, just trying to ignore the things that I couldn't do and couldn't figure out and couldn't fix. And when he'd call, I'd say, oh, okay, fine. And then it was kind of like once a month and then once a quarter. And then he left me with, I'll come and help you with anything. I'm just not going to keep calling you. You're on your own. But that was such a gift. So I want to thank you all so much for doing this. You've been wonderful, and I'm so honored to have gotten to share this experience with you. And I will be publishing these panels on Sunday, so you guys will see yourselves on Sunday. That gives me time to learn how to use the editor. And so thank you so much, and I will see you all later on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barb.
I appreciate hearing all of your stories also. Thank you.
Yeah. Blessings to all of you on your journey.
Yes, thank you all.
Okay,
And a
bye-bye.